Your sensors are correct. Do not adjust your heading. You've discovered the Omega particle, streaming to the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Here's your host, the anchorman of the Federation, the Doctor of Dilithium. This is Jonathan Wiegand.
Welcome to the Omega Particle Podcast. Like the man said, I am your host, Jonathan Wiegand, and this is the OPP Institute of Advanced Trek Studies, and I am making a house call. Your Doctor of Dilithium is in, and we have a interesting show for you today. You better strap in because it is a bold new frontier, and bold is a statement. This dumpster fire of a movie, I'm not going to pull back any punches today. We will be reviewing. It is Section 31. The first Star Trek expands into streaming movies, and hopefully not the last, because this did not set a good precedence for its hopefully future films that we get. Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh returns as her interesting and captivating role as Philippa Georgiou once again, and the last time she kind of took her role on directly was in Star Trek Discovery. And we're kind of going to be reuniting with that mirror universe Empress turned Section 31 operative and see how she can deal with new dangers that are like wasting my time and playing on my phone. I'm sorry, I'm just coming in spicy today. I just did not like this movie at all. It was a chore to get through. Much like doing the dishes, I felt like I had to do it because I have a Star Trek podcast and I needed to review it, and I was hoping beyond hope that it was going to be good, and it just wasn't. And we'll get into what critics have been saying. We'll get into what you have been saying. We've asked on our social media channels what you, the beautiful, intelligent audience, thought. I don't think I'm alone in this. So if you're listening to this and you have seen the movie, bless your heart and welcome. We can vent and throw things as we listen to this together. And if you haven't watched it, well, count yourself lucky, my friend, because I'm saving you about an hour, 30, 35 minutes. And if you did like this movie, I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoy it. This week, this past Sunday, and those in the real world here, Star Trek finally returned to the world of movies, but this had a very different spin. It is the first streaming exclusive movie the franchise has ever done. But in perspective, Section 31 is supposed to be shining a light on the darkest ideas to ever kind of come into Star Trek's utopian vision, the seedy underbelly and moving in the shadows compared to the light. That is what we've all seen and heard of Section 31. From the very first moment it was introduced in Deep Space Nine, it's been considered almost a affront to the utopian vision, like I just said, and almost a insult to be like, why would we need people like this, an organization like this? It's ruining our ideal vision of the future, which, I understand. And if you didn't know, and you're kind of new to Star Trek, so the man who created Gene Roddenberry created a universe with this utopian, humanistic ideals. It was a beautiful thing. There was no racism, there was no sexism, there was no greed, there was no poverty, there was no want, and human beings were valued and kind of respected, but it wasn't about what we outputted. It wasn't about what we produced. It was about what we did in our own personal lives, how we grew, and that is how success was measured in the 24th century. We have many episodes in our vast catalog of OPP episodes about this, but just giving you a little taste here. And there's a lot of people on the flip side say, hey, you don't reach the levels of equality, kindness, compassion, and peace, and all those beautiful things that the Federation stands for without having this really locked away, crazy cousin in the attic that lives on chicken bones and chicken broth, and that just does all of the terrible deeds in your house, but the house is so beautiful and put together. So that's what Section 31 is. It is almost a mythology in the realm of Star Trek. These characters don't want to believe it. because it breaks every rule possible, and it's very controversial. And especially in the context when it was first introduced in Deep Space Nine during the Dominion War. And so we had this existential threat to the Federation, unlike anything we've ever seen in Star Trek before. It's kind of like, okay, maybe we do need something like this, an off-the-books operation that can create weapons that could end the war but kill billions in the process. I wanted to kind of give a little breakdown of like, hey, this is the history of Section 31. This is a complicated one. This is almost like Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, very in the weeds. You don't know who's who. You don't know what side you're fighting for. You don't know what you're doing. It's the gray area. And this movie did none of that. This touched on none of those themes. It touched on none of the potential that could have been there. When I think of Section 31, I think of Agent Sloan and Julian Bashir and him waking up in the middle of the night and Sloan, he wasn't smoking, was he? Luna the intern, everybody. This villainy, but you kind of glad he's on your side because he's a total douche. But we got none of that. What we got was a hunkering pile of something. And I will say this. I respect the idea of doing something new in the Star Trek universe. I am not opposed to trying new things. Like when Lower Decks came out, a lot of people were like, oh, that's a comedy. Oh, it's a cartoon. Star Trek's supposed to be serious. And I love Lower Decks. And I'm so happy they did that. It just revitalized the franchise and brought in so many new fans. So I'm not opposed to trying new things or doing new things. I mean, you can't eat chicken tenders when you go overseas and visit Japan, right? I mean, I guess you can, but I'm saying like it's okay to try new things and expand. And I'm glad the franchise is doing this. But the way they marketed this movie, the way it was rolled out, which we'll get into, it just was a disaster from the beginning. It should have just been scrapped. But Paramount had a golden goose, and they did not want to let go of that golden goose. And so we, the fans, suffer for it. I'll even get into it a little bit more to what one of the actors in the movie kind of says he's afraid of the fans and what we're going to say. And because it's very different and we didn't give them what they want. That's a direct quote. So without further ado, I just kind of gave you a little bit of taste, but let's get into our deep dive review of Section 31. Luna, let's roll that beautiful bean footage. Haven't even gotten to the review yet? We've been talking for 3 hours. And that SpongeBob thing comes up 2 hours later. No, I promise we're going to kind of rail in a little bit. I had a lot to say to get off my chest because we've waited 9 years for a movie, any movie, after Star Trek Beyond. And we all know how the Kelvin universe and Star Trek Beyond bombed. It was not good, even though it had... What was it? Was it dirt bikes, Luna? Oh my gosh. So it just, this has been a tumultuous past for Star Trek films. So I wasn't a really big fan of the Kelvin universe. And now we're kind of, okay, we're getting into streaming movies. Hey, if this is successful, maybe this has kind of started a chain reaction, maybe get some really cool content, etc. No. I mean, there was even talks of Quentin Tarantino, unexpected foray into it, and that got sucked into a pre-production black hole and never came off the screen, or came off the mat. So we've had this big absence, and we're like, oh, we're going to get this crazy new TV era instead. So this TV era, under the great leadership of Alex Kurtzman, has produced a lot of awesome shows and future awesome shows. That's a very controversial thing. I do like Strange New Worlds. I have not finished Discovery. Not that I don't like Discovery, but it just is... It insists upon itself. It insists upon itself. That's what I feel about Discovery. And if you ask me what that means, I don't know. It just insists upon itself, like The Godfather. And I think it's a different type of shopping aisle that we're going down, and I'm okay with that. But now that we have this TV movie, it's kind of this long, gestating spinoff from Discovery, and we've been waiting years for it, and I really didn't like it. It was a swing and a miss, and the main reason this movie got made is simply because Michelle Yeoh won an Oscar for Best Actress in Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's why this movie got made. It was originally scrapped as a TV series. They were going to make maybe a one-off season or something like that. And then when she won the Oscar, it kind of got into production hell because she was going to go into a bunch of other stuff. So they're like, all right, well, we're going to take a show and turn it into a movie. And so we're getting reverse Kenobi'd. Now, I don't know if you knew about because I know this is a Star Trek podcast, but it relates. So it was Obi-Wan Kenobi a few years ago. It was supposed to be a movie. And then Disney's like, well, we want to make more money. So let's turn it into a TV show. And the TV show, you could tell it just didn't fit. Like, it was too much. And that's exactly what happened here, but the exact opposite. It was more of a TV show. It was way too busy. Again, we'll get into that. And it just didn't fit because originally it was due to the COVID and the writer strike and the surging popularity of they just try to cash in the golden goose. And I understand. I mean, it totally makes sense why they did that. It was kind of like we get this random movie instead of like a shadow organization, like I mentioned before, Agent Sloan, and kind of trying to work in the shadows and with, but also against the Starfleet and the Federation. We get this movie about a weapon from a Terran weapon that was going to destroy the universe, and then literally, I'm not exaggerating, people, like half the movie was about setting it up, which we're not going to get into the plot holes because I don't want this to be an hour plus long. Okay, there's a mole. Let's try to figure out the mole. And then we figured out the mole. Well, let's try to save the universe now. And so it's just too much. And it was just way too much. And instead of this really cool organization that we could have deep dived into, we get this. It's not even, it's like one review from Polygon said it best. It is the weirdest Star Trek movie ever. And to me, it is officially the worst Star Trek movie in history. And that's an impressive feat. So Nemesis, dust yourself off the mat. It's no longer you. It's just that you could tell that this wasn't supposed to be a movie. From the very beginning, it's jam-packed with TV series worth of ideas. So we get the first like 15, 20 minutes of the introduction, and then these really weird kind of subplots where everyone comes together and then they're like, I'm never going to work with you. Okay, I'll work with you because we don't have the time to kind of gestate it and make this more of a camaraderie, more chemistry because we're under a time crunch because it's a movie. And so some of the ideas they present are really like chewy and fascinating in a classic Trek sort of way. And then some are very wildly outside the franchise's norm. But I think it would have been more successful if these ideas had a lot more room to breathe and a lot more room to develop and gestate. If you're kind of curious what I'm saying and you're kind of like, what is this guy doing? Is he drunk? If you've ever seen Beetlejuice 2, like the new Beetlejuice, it had like 6 plots in the movie. And they all wrapped it up at the end, but it was way too much. Like you really had to just kind of keep track of all these different threads. And that's exactly what this movie felt like. We had the Terran weapon, we had Section 31, we had the future Captain of the Enterprise, which is a fun little thing we'll get into. All while we have ties to Discovery, Georgiou's past that are like coming back about her family, about her long-lost lover that turned into her servant. And if you haven't seen the movie, you're going to be like, what? Is that a sentence? And literally now we have this weapon called God's End that will destroy the universe, all while trying to figure out this mole at the same time. And I think if they just stuck maybe with the weapon or the mole, or I feel like those two could have been good, but still, it's even those two on alone aren't really anything to write home about. It's nothing new in the sense of plot development. It's something new in the sense of like, oh wow, this is really thinking outside the box and outside the writing, like we saw with Picard season 3, or even with some of the lower decks plots. And I'm not going to be one of those like keyboard warriors that are like, no, it's not Star Trek because it's not what I like, and it's meh. Like it could have been good, but from a production standpoint, it just wasn't there, and they just try to swing for the fences too hard. And hopefully with Starfleet Academy and other like things in production, maybe it'll be able to get off the ground and get a lot better. And that's what I'm hoping, because I want the franchise to do well. I want it to be successful. I want it to bring in new fans. And there are a small contingent of people that liked it, that think it's, hey, this is unlike any Star Trek movie I ever saw. It's great. We put it out on Instagram on our story, and we asked you guys, what did you think? We probably got about 180 responses. And I'm not exaggerating. Out of 180 responses, 2 of them were positive. So if you like the movie, and I've always said this on the podcast, that's great. Hats off to you, clap, and that's great. Because I don't want to shit on anybody that has a good time and enjoys it. Because, we're all working for the man, and we work long days. Sometimes we have good days and bad days. And if you sit down and watch something and you get some enjoyment out of it, God bless you. That's all that matters. So I don't want to poop on that. And I just feel like but again, this is the job of the reviewer, the job of Star Trek podcast. That's what we love to do and love to pick apart, because, sometimes I can't tell my spouse all of this or my friends, because then I wouldn't have anybody with this too. So thank you for listening to me going into it. But besides that, there's no other ties to Section 31. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's labeled Section 31, but you literally could have called it like Emperor Jojo or the Emperor's Journey or something. And it would have still fit. Like the Section 31 thing, you could have called it Delta Force or something random. Like, it would not have impeded anything on the movie. And that kind of makes me sad, because I was really hoping for this really neat spy thriller of a production. And so, getting into some fun facts about the movie, I know I mentioned one earlier. The dude who wrote this and produced it, Sweeney, he's written for a lot of great Discovery episodes. Context is for Kings, that was one. And he populates a lot of this movie with old and new ideas. The Deltan species, which is I don't know how to say this. She's the promiscuous agent in the group. She's bald, but there's also a bald Deltan lady in the Star Trek motion picture, the very first one. So we finally see another Deltan. We see a very young version of Rachel Garrett, and she is the first female captain in the USS Enterprise, and she appeared in one episode of TNG in 1990. There are some smaller Easter egg in the movie. There's some fun ones, like different species we haven't seen since the original series. I really liked how they did with the shapeshifter and how he, like the CGI with that. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. No knock on DS9, but it was the 90s, and glittery golden sludge, it only goes so far. So I really like what they did with the shapeshifter. He wasn't Dominion or a founder, but he just was a shapeshifter in general. And so there's not a lot of fun, cool facts, but a little bit there. I know I kind of trashed on the movie a lot, but I think with Yo, I think she did what was best available with her. It was a very crowded call sheet. There was a lot of actresses and actors on it. Her character feels like horribly sanitized. So she was very like villainous and conniving and skeeving and kind of like, ooh, don't mess with her, like in Discovery. And then now I just feel like her villainous edges are sanded off and kind of this cookie cutter, like, I'm like bland. It just was like bland chicken. Like, that's her character. And so the sad part is that we know this lady has acting chops. We know she can throw down with the best of them in any movie, anytime. But she's only able to do with what the director and Sweeney, who's a producer, gave her. The two main writers, Bo Kim and Erica, I'm going to butcher this name, Leopold, gave her. And even with this pedigree, the results are very disappointing. I know it kind of got lost in with production hell, with scheduling and the pandemic, and then with you winning the Oscar, it kind of got mixed up, and maybe it should have just been scrapped altogether. But I think, like I said, they got their golden goose and didn't want to go. It is the weirdest Star Trek movie, I would say, in tone, character lineup, and setting. It exactly doesn't work as a standalone Star Trek movie either, in part because it's due to how finite it is and how limited it feels. From this moment on, there's no Section 31 sequel movie or series spinoff coming, and so it's just like, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're looking for kind of like what they did a couple years ago, those Star Trek shorts, it's like, that's it. But, those were fun because they were only a couple minutes long, and they had different subject matters, and it's not like this where it's like, okay, this is an hour 35, hour 40. this is all it's going to be. We're never going to see these characters again. This plot will never be referenced again. This is it. So there are some fun moments in it, especially that's why I'm not giving it a total like crapshoot. I think IGN gave it, and we'll get into this, a 2 out of 10, because the main reason was their fight scenes. Fight scenes were really cool, really good. Visual effects and the sets were spot on, and that's kind of the issue that we have with just all like sci-fi. I feel like with Star Wars and Star Trek, is that the sets are great, costumes are awesome, everything looks exactly how it should from visual effects, but it just doesn't. It's missing, and it's that extra secret sauce that we got in Picard season 3, and that we're never going to probably get again. But maybe, I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'll liven up. And like I said, kind of getting into other reviews, IGN labeled it as 100 minutes of generic Star Trek that had only trace elements of the original series. It lacked exploration, intellectual depth. Empire Magazine wrote that Section 31 makes for a disheartening send-off of once great character. Robert Lloyd of the Los Angeles Times observed the film reflects its origins as a planned TV series. He remarked, almost everything about Section 31 says pilot episode, as if the film did not want to let go of the possibility of being a TV show. As of recording right now, it has a 19% score on Rotten Tomatoes from 21 critics and a 36 Metascore on Metacritic. So these ratings highlight a widespread criticism. The movie's lack of originality and failure to deliver the depth and thematic resonance that we expect from Star Trek movie. And I think that is telling, because it's kind of across the board. Like I said, we had 180 plus, literally only 2 were positive on social media. And one of the films, and this is what the problem is. Not only, this is what I'm about to say is going to be like, well, duh, Jonathan. But this is where you get the problem of corporations, calm down, I'm not gonna rant, but corporations and artists. And so, and I always hear, because I'm a big fan of comedy, so I always hear about how people on the board, people in the suits, as they say, will come in and say, that's not funny, this is funny, do this in the TV show. That's not Star Trek, do this in the movie, because this is what people want. And when that happens, you get movies like this, where it's, well, let me read what Robert Kaczynski said, who plays Zep. So Kaczynski actually, in an interview, considers himself a huge Trek fan. And he had a previous interview with Trek Movie, and he was afraid that the fans would not receive the new film with open arms. And direct quote here, "I'm terrified of how it's going to be received, because it's not the Trek people want. The Trek that people want, the Trek that we all want, is just 1,000 more episodes of TNG," Kaczynski said. "Everyone's always furious that they're not getting more TNG, while at the same time when TNG came out, everybody hated it. So this is going to come along, and this is not going to feel like any Trek they've ever seen." So first off, I would say as a fan base, that's insulting. Plain and simple. Like, I feel insulted, like, because I think that is somebody's, I'm a huge Trek fan, but everything everybody wants is 100,000 more hours of TNG. No. So what we want is original stories that are well thought out, characters that are developed, sets and, that are amazing, and same thing with special effects. That's like second or third tier. I just want something that's actually well thought out, written, and just really not fan service, but just, can it just be a good movie? Can it just be a good TV show? Like, and I know that's kind of like, well, duh, John, you have no idea what you're talking about. But it's like, that's what we want. We don't want rehashes of TNG where, they get stuck in the elevator, or there's a random entity that somehow gets on the ship and takes over the ship, and they have to recapture it or something. No, that's not what we want. We want new stories. We want new characters. We want new things. We just don't want it to suck. And so to basically say, no, they're not going to like it because they don't want this. They want TNG, and they're never satisfied, because when TNG came out, they weren't happy with that. They thought it sucked. First off, sir, Picard season 3, everybody loved. I know not everybody, but it was widely considered the best a reboot. So I doubt the dude's a fan, just to be blunt. Anyway, I'm ranting. Even when they were at Comic-Con last year, Kaczynski said, I deep dove on this guy because I was kind of pissed. He's like, well, there's a need for somebody to roll up their sleeves and live in the gray areas. So we get comments like that, and we're like, oh, freak yeah, man, this movie's going to be great. It's going to be kind of like cat and mouse game, living in the shadows type of thing. No, what we get is this movie that could be labeled Star Trek because technically it happens in the Star Trek universe, and it's kind of like The Penguin. This is, but poorly done. So it takes place in the world of Batman. It has nothing to do with Batman. This is what this is. It's Star Trek, but in the world of Star Trek, but has nothing to do with Star Trek. So you can do it. It can be done, as we saw with The Penguin. Boy, that show was dark, but you can't do it with things like this. So he's trying to blame the fans. I would blame probably Paramount before I blame anybody else. So, but to wrap it up, that has been my review of Section 31. Again, if you enjoy it, I'm not pooping on you. God bless you if you liked it. That's cool. Like I said, we all work long hours, and the world is a rough place. So if you get some enjoyment out of it, awesome. That's what we want, and I never want anybody to feel demoralized or I'm talking down to you because you like something. And I know a lot of Trek fans are that way, and those people are just sad. So either way, thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it. And so, Luna, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening. That has been our review of Section 31. And thank you for sticking with the podcast and sticking this long. And if you ever want more Trek content, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram, on X, on Facebook. We're on pretty much everything, YouTube, and we would love to hear from you guys. And let me know what you think. I know we got a big response already, but yeah, shoot me a message and be like, no, you made good points here, but no, I really enjoyed it. You're a moron, whatever. Feel free to reach out. We love hearing from you guys here at the OPP team. And we had some maintenance set up with some of our equipment, so we had to replace some of our equipment. So we've been kind of down for a couple weeks, but we should be up and running soon. And again, thank you so much for listening, and take care of yourselves out there. And remember, mental health is super important. So without further ado, second star of the right, straight on to morning.